Is John there?
Hey, Jake.
How you doing, boss?
How you doing?
Good, man.
Fine. How you doing?
Good. You ready to go?
Yeah, all set.
All right, we're going to be good this time. Let's just settle in.
Okay. You got it.
Folks, welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above 3773 East Broadway. This is a live edition of the Jake Feinberg Show, coming to you on Power Talk. Please go to our website, powertalk.live. Download our free app to your smartphone so you can stream all of our live local programming, including Solomon on Blast, the Jim Parisi Show, and yours truly, the Jake Feinberg Show. Can't thank you enough for making us part of your day today, and we're back online, and it's great to invite a friend of the program back onto the airwaves, one of the baddest guitarists of all time, John Morell. Welcome back to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thank you, Jake. It's really great being here with you.
So how did your dad actually originally connect with Tommy Tedesco? Did Tedesco come through Niagara Falls or Buffalo?
Well, what actually happened was my grandfather was kind of the guitar teacher of Niagara Falls, and everybody that was there and grew up there in the 30s took lessons from my grandfather, and Tommy was one of those guys that took lessons from him, and they all kind of grew up together.
What does he remember about? I mean, what does he say about your grandfather's teaching style? I mean, it was not, there was no book, you know?
No, well, my grandfather was a seat of the pants player, so to speak, but he really prided himself on being like understanding the basics and all that kind of stuff. So he had an awful lot of students at that period of time, and just did his job. He felt it was something that he should do, and he was kind of an entertainer of sorts. And he would, he'd play clubs. He was a banjo player too, and he played all like
the bluegrass,
or folk. Yeah, no, not the bluegrass. It was more of a 1920s type banjo player.
Wow.
And I mean, it was wild. And he was really into music and everything, and kind of drew his son into it. And of course, my father was a much more serious guitar player, and Tommy, of course, was also. But they all came out of that same group of guys, and there were a lot of other guitar players too from that time period.
What in your mind? What in John Morell's mind? What makes? I mean, just because your grandfather was, off the cuff. He didn't read. What made your dad a serious musician? Just the fact that he read music and played for gigs and made money and made a livelihood off of it.
No, I think it was more than that. He was just much more talented. I mean, he understood music, understood writing. He had a big band, and he wrote all the charts himself for the big band, and just much more serious about it. He understood. He read very well, and worked at it really hard. And he taught me how to play, and gave me that work ethic towards it. And so, I spent a lot of time working, a lot of time practicing.
Well, I mean, but when he was a big band leader, was he writing bebop charts, or what? And what was it was a big band? Like, was it Benny Goodman? Like, what was?
Well, I mean, in those days he did he did a lot of dances in Niagara Falls, so to speak. And so it was more of a dance. It was more of a dance book. And
it was a dance, so people were dancing to it. It was dance music.
Yeah, right.
But it was not like, it was not Rodgers and he was making his own original tunes.
He was writing his own stuff and also arranging a lot of the tunes of the day. And I mean, it was a way to make a buck. Everybody had to make a living at that period of time in Niagara, and there wasn't a lot to choose from, which was one of the reasons why he packed his bags and left and came out to California, because there was a lot of work out here. And so his life changed when he moved out here, and changed for me too, because at that time I was young and I went to high school and I met all these guys. So I mean, there was a lot of great players to play with.
Your dad in the studio, I mean, it's hard enough to find your material, what you're on, but yeah. Was he credited on a lot of stuff? I mean, how much stuff did he not even get credit on the liner notes?
Well, I mean, he did all the pop stuff of the day. He did all of the Sinatra things, as I did a lot of Sinatra also. But during his time, before he passed away, he did Sinatra, he did Dean Martin, he did all the television shows that were going. He did the Beach Boys, he did Sonny and Cher. I mean, he did all these things as part of that wrecking crew in the early '60s. So he was very active doing all that stuff.
Would you say that you were? What was your first? Could you talk about your first experience being inside the studios for maybe going in before the sun came up and not leaving until it went till after it went down? I mean, like before you were a professional, but like what that was like for you, the impact it had.
Well, at the time I started working a lot was about around the time I got married, about 68, 67, 68, and I started to do a lot of work in those days. And you'd find yourself recording, you do a date in the morning at 8 o'clock and another date in the afternoon at 12 and another date at 7 at night. And then in my case, I used to do 3 dates a day, and then I'd go to the Manhole and play with Shelley. And so, I mean, it was just constant music. It was great. It was a great time.
Did you, I guess, how did you originally meet Shelley Mann?
I was very good friends with Gary Barone, who was Gary and Mike Barone. They had a band, and Mike was a writer on The Tonight Show. And Gary and I met in college, and, we started to play together all the time. And John Gross, who's a wonderful saxophone player also. And, we met each other, and they told Shelley about me. And so I wound up, he asked me, I used to come down and play whenever Mike Wofford couldn't make it, and they needed a chord instrument.
Right.
Basically, they would call me, and I would go down and I'd sub for Mike. And then after a while, Shelley asked me if I wanted to join the band. And what can you say? I mean, it was wonderful. It was great. I love Shelley. I learned more about playing from Shelley probably than anybody else. I mean, the guy was a monster drummer, just wonderful to play with. Strong, really strong.
Hold on. You went to LA City College with Barone?
I went to Valley State College.
Valley State. Okay, so go ahead.
At that time, it was Valley State. Now it's University Northridge, Cal State Northridge.
And was it free at that time? I mean, did you just what kind of?
No, well, it was inexpensive. I don't even remember what the hell it cost, but it was I don't think it was more than $400 or $500 a semester.
Right, it was
for
really
all the classes.
And were you there?
Really inexpensive.
Were you there just studying music, or what was the degree there?
I was there for 4 years, playing in the band there, and also I was an anthropology major actually, and just trying to. And then I was trying to get a degree in teaching, but I got so involved in music and recording that I just, I waited until I was there about 3-4 years, and then I and then I got out and just started to work the studios. I was very lucky. There was a lot of work in those days.
Well, I mean, so but it's what's amazing is your dad was at the peak of his career. Or I could be wrong about this. I mean, maybe he was on the but when did he retire? I mean, the thing is, you started in '68, and were you guys working dually alongside each other?
Yeah, we used to work for Don Costa, who was a great writer.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we used to do all of Don's stuff and all of the Sinatra things, Trini Lopez, My Way. I mean, all the records of the day that Don did, and my father and I would be all on those dates. My father had a heart attack in 1972, I believe it was, and he passed away. So I mean, it was rather abrupt. And but in those days I was working with Mancini and anybody and everybody. I mean, there was a lot of work and there was a lot of demand for guitar players. And so, I mean, it was interesting. I kept that going along with playing. I used to play the clubs here in town. I don't know if you remember these clubs, but there was Dante's and there was Carmelo's. There were a lot of local clubs, and we'd play the clubs all the time. I mean, it was great. There was a lot of music.
How did your dad's death have impact you as a human being?
My father was a very, very devoted musician, and so it meant a lot to me, and it made me focus on playing, and he had a great sense of harmony, great sense of how to play, what not to play. He showed me what to listen to, what not to listen to, the players who were the really strong players. He had a great sense of that stuff. And it was very, very important in my development as a player. But I must say that what really had the strongest impact on my playing was the guys that I was playing with. I was so fortunate that I had so many really good players in high school and college, and we just all played together all the time. I mean, that's all we did. I mean, we'd get together and play. We'd play till all hours of the night, and I learned more during that period of time probably than any other. I mean, it was great.
Oh, this has always been fascinating because, first of all, I just turned 40 years old, so I mean, most of the clubs that you played with I wasn't even birthed at that point.
Yeah, they're all gone.
But when I've interviewed Ed Green, Wilton Feld, or David T. Walker, they did a lot of work with Gene Page, with Barry White, and Gene would just come in with like some chord changes and no arrangements, and he'd kind of tell Ed like he'd want like a certain feel or a tempo on the drums. But I'm just want you to talk about an experience in the studios, working with somebody, whether it was Mancini or Axelrod, whoever. Can you talk about a time when it was just presented to you as chord changes, very little, and allowing you guys essentially, while you're studio musicians, to be able to put your own point of view on it? Because that's what's missing in modern music today, is the ability for somebody to come in and play the part. We're bringing Morell in to play funky rhythm chops and play a solo, but we're also going to allow him to say his piece. Could you point to a time when you had that kind of freedom in the studios?
Right. Well, I think in the early years, excuse me, in the late '60s, there was a lot of records, and I was in. I mean, I worked with Gene Page, and Eddie Green used to live across the street from me. We worked together a lot. And
that's awesome. That is so great.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that is great.
Eddie and I were really good friends. I haven't seen him in a long time. I know he's back.
He's in like Nashville or something.
He's in Nashville. Right. My son talked to him not too long ago. But I mean, it was like that with all of us. We just get called. Like if you worked for Gene Page, you would just get called and you'd go to the studio and they put a chord sheet in front of you, and bingo, you'd have to play. I remember I did a bunch of dates with Phil Spector one time, and I mean it was the same thing. It was like there were like 4 guitars and 2 drummers, Jimmy Keltner and Hal Blaine, and a whole bunch of us, 2-3 bass players, and I mean they would just start the song and everybody would contribute whatever they could contribute to make it happen. But they were crazy days, actually. We had a lot of fun in those days. But a lot of it was also, I mean, there was a lot of written music and television, film, and all that kind of stuff too that had really big demands on it. You know what I mean? Where you went in and you had to play. I mean, it was all you for 24 bars, and then the orchestra would come in, and you'd never seen the music before. So
hold on. I just missed that. You're saying for live television or TV commercials?
Well, like for live TV or for a movie or whatever it was, you'd walk in and of course, for all of us, anybody that did that kind of work, you never saw the music before.
Right.
You would just walk in and there'd be music on your stand, and it was up to you to play whatever it's there. And there was a lot of pressure on us as musicians in those days. Or even now, actually, in order to do that kind of stuff, you had to know how to read real well, but you also had to know how to interpret what was written. And so, I mean, it was quite a time of life, actually. It was a lot of fun.
Well, I mean, what was for you, you had to interpret the song. Did you, when you got out there, did you work with any singer-songwriters, or I mean, I know you did you do any stuff? What was the hardest thing for you to interpret, either in the studio or live? Which I hate labels in music, but which was the most challenging for you?
Yeah, I mean that's a really hard question, actually, because my basic personality as a guitar player has always been in the jazz field.
Right.
So. I mean, spreading out and playing all the other styles was always hard. I mean, I wasn't a natural pop rock guitar player, but I had to do that. And so you learned how to do it. You listened to the way everybody else played it, and you tried, like if I was working with Larry Carlton, for instance, or Dean Parks or any of those guys, which we used to work a lot together in the early 70s, mid 70s. And so you'd listen to the way they interpreted that kind of stuff because they were more into the pop thing than I was. And, I learned a lot from those guys, too. And
could you talk specifically about, like, coming from the jazz background, even though you were already coming up with, I mean, you were already obsessed with Kind of Blue and, like, the space and the music. So what in the pop realm did Parks and Carlton, however subtly, what did they hip you to?
Well, I just listened to the way they played more than anything else, and I'd pick up on the licks they played. I'd pick up on the attitude that they had towards how they interpreted the record and that kind of stuff. And then everything else that related to it, I was like everybody else. I listened to all the pop music of the day and all the pop singers, and I tried to be as up on all the styles as I could, so that, I mean, when I was a guitar player working all the time, I used to carry like trunks of guitars, like we all did, and I had 20 guitars in my trunk, so I had to be fairly facile at playing the banjo and the ukulele and the mandolin and the 12-string guitar and the acoustic guitar and the electric guitar and the 12-string. And, it was a real challenge. And, I found it very interesting and also very, what's the word? Very hard. It was very difficult to keep up on all the styles.
Can you just riff on the idea? You had 4 guitars. Sometimes these sessions with Spector, Creed Taylor on the East Coast would have the same thing with McLaughlin and Herb Ellis and all these cats. And David T was talking about what he learned to do was just actually lay back and play pretty lines, because that way he would cut through the other three guitarists. You know what I'm trying to, how did you approach that when you were playing with multiple guitarists? Like, he basically said, I just tried to get those pretty licks. That's what I kind of developed my niche with that.
Right. Well, I think what happened when there were four of us playing like that, we'd all try to find the thing that we did the best, and so I was more of a rhythm player in those days. Like, I did Dukes of Hazzard, that television show.
Oh my God! You did Dukes?
I
grew up on that show. I mean, I lived on that show, man.
Yeah. I did that show for about 9 years, and
just some
it was
good
a crazy
old boys.
show.
Oh man!
Well, because on that show, I think it was me and Mitch Holder and Tim May and Larry McNeely played banjo, and we all did what we did. I remember Fred Werner, who was a writer on the show. He would write me all the little acoustic guitar parts and all the pretty lines and everything. And everybody else would be playing all the funky country western things. Larry McNeely would be playing the banjo. J.D. Manis would be playing all the steel guitar parts. So we all knew what we did well. Not only that, but the writers knew what we did well. That's why they hired us. They knew that I would not do what Larry did or what Dean did or what these guys did, but I had my little niche, and that's what I would do. And so it was fairly easy. I mean, we'd all just kind of fall into our own positions. And it was interesting.
Well, no, it's completely mind-blowing, actually, because it's the idea there is that you guys all brought something different to the table.
Exactly.
And it made the whole. But I consider Parks, Carlton and you especially, I mean, I don't know. You guys could all play jazz really good, So it's like, it's interesting. Like, it's just more like style. It's like, it's attitude. What attitude are you bringing? And the point is, it was being done by human beings in a room. I mean, did you ever? Do you have the first memory of a session you went to when you were just told to lay down a guitar part? Was that commonplace in the '60s?
You're talking about going in and overdubbing a party?
Yeah, like Don Randy's like, they call me in to do a piano piece. I do it. They say, great, we're done. See ya. Before it was like those Phil Spector sessions. I mean, Terry Gibbs was getting his head dunked in a vat of cocaine, I mean, it was insane.
Right.
I mean, this stuff is, it was insanity. And I understand it went too far and the budgets for Steely Dan and all that went out of control. And, obviously you blew through that stuff. But, I mean, like you said, it was really about the cats, like just being with the other cats. Like it was about making music, and everybody saw when I interviewed Blaine, he said that I said, why weren't you getting upset that you weren't on the back of the Beach Boys albums playing drums, getting credit for playing drums, right? And he's just he was like what could I do? I came from here. And all of a sudden, I'm seeing my family we're getting wealthier, moving into bigger houses. He goes, I could have cared less if I got credit for it or not, And in this day and age, when we are just clamoring for licensing and credit, and everything's commodified. It's amazing that he had that attitude, and I guess it kind of must have been the same for you too. I mean, just kind of. I just am getting off playing. I don't really care if my name shows up on the back of the album.
Yeah, I never really thought much about that. I just enjoyed the fact that I was able to make a buck at it and support my family, and also get a chance to have the guitar in my hands all the time. And then aside from the working part of my life, playing that kind of stuff and doing that, I always had a group of guys that I played with. I always had a band that I tried to write music for, and we'd do a certain amount of recording with guys like Bill Mays and Joel DeBartolo, and we would always find that aspect of our lives and always concentrate on that as well as working. I always considered working to be kind of a separate thing, but it was so enjoyable being with all the guys all the time. They were just wonderful players all the time.
Did you ever did you ever actually go? Did you work in touring bands when you moved out there?
No, I never really went on the road with a band.
When did you? You must have gone on the road once or so. I mean, come on, there must have been some tour for Morell.
Well, I went. The only time I ever really went out of town was, I went out of town for 3 or 4 days with Sinatra, and then I went out of town with Andy Williams for like a week or two. And actually, I was on the road with whatchamacallit, the Righteous Brothers in the late '60s. Yeah.
Oh my God! And are you kidding me?
No.
Who was in the Sinatra band? Was Emil in the band? Who was in the band?
Actually, Irv Kotler was playing drums.
Sure.
And I'm trying to remember who the piano player was at that time. I think Jim Hewitt was playing bass.
Sure.
And or Don Baldwin, one of those guys. And then Buddy Rich's band was actually playing all the charts, and Buddy would open the band. Buddy would open the show and play, and then Sinatra would come in and sing.
I'm sure. Yeah, no, that
was a lot of fun.
I mean,
a lot of fun.
What was that? Yeah, I mean, that must have been.
There was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Did Frank get uptight about, how free? I mean, was it that of a formula trip, or would he let things loosen up?
Actually, he was the live shows I did with him. He was great. I mean, he just
how was it
let
different
the
from the
band
records?
Play.
Yeah, I'd love to hear about how he let it stretch out.
Well, whenever we did any recording with him, I remember after he came out of retirement, he did that old Blue Eyes Is Back album.
Yeah, sure.
And I did that album with Johnny Guerin was playing drums.
Rest in peace, man. What a great drummer, man.
Yeah. He was just my favorite guy. And we were really close friends.
It's so beautiful because he's one of the spirits has been pushing me on this mission. There's a bunch of them. John Guerin is one. I mean, he keeps coming up, man. He was a monster player. It's
right.
Just, I mean, it's awesome that you guys were tight. I didn't mean to cut you off, but
right.
Go ahead.
No, but when we did those albums, he'd let the band do what the band did. He trusted Don Costa to do whatever Don did, and he'd just come on the bandstand and sing, and he'd do 1 take, 2 takes, and that would be it. It would be just done. And it was very easy to work for, not hard at all. But
on the road, he would maybe walk off the stand, let you guys stretch out once in a while.
It would be a thing where
you get a glass of scotch or something.
Yeah, well, I mean, I wish. But
I mean, there are stories. Marty Ballin from Jefferson Airplane told me that, like John Coltrane at the Jazz Workshop would go playing his horn. He'd walk off the stand, he'd go take a piss, but he's still playing. It's like it was I know Sinatra was upper scale stuff, but I'm just saying to me, the cool. I guess this is better. The better question is, like, Gadsden was on the road with Hank Ballard and the Midnighters, right? And they would do. They would go across the country, drive at 110 miles an hour, and they'd play the opening set. Ballard would allow the quartet or whatever it was to play to open the show. And at the time, in the early '60s, mid '60s, they were obsessed with modal jazz, like Coltrane jazz. So they would play a set of that, and then Ballard would come on and play the raunchy R&B stuff. But the point is that, did you get a chance to play? I know the answer is yes. It's just, I mean, maybe you didn't cut a record, but like Guerin, Tom Scott, like, was there a band or some kind of, during that period of the '60s when the music was really burning? Did you have a chance to play that kind of transcendent jazz at that time?
Well, the most important musical thing for me during the late '60s, early '70s was playing with an organ player named Steve Bohannon. and Steve and I went to high school together, not to the same high school, but we were in high school at the same time. Right. And we had a little quartet with a little trio with Tom Scott, and we won the Battle of the Bands at the
that is ridiculous.
The Hollywood
Hold
Bowl.
on for a second. You had no drummer? You had no drummer?
We had no drummer.
Oh my God! Where are the tapes of this stuff? We need to hear the tapes of this stuff.
Yeah, there's a record someplace.
Oregon. So he's
find
kicking. Is he kicking pedals? Bohannon's kicking pedals on bass on the B3. Tom Scott on horns. Yeah. And you on guitar.
And just me.
Oh my God! That's insane.
And that same year that we won, the Carpenters won. So you realize how long ago that was.
Stretching.
But I mean, it was just great. We had a wonderful time. But I used to play with Steve Bohannon all the time, and we worked a lot of the clubs here in town. We used to work with Jack Sheldon. Jack Sheldon used to come and play with us, and who's the valve trombone player? Carl Fontana.
Oh my! Are you kidding me?
Used to come in and play.
Fontana was coming down there.
To play.
This is unbelievable. Yeah, so I mean, how did you learn? Like, just talk to the audience about in your own. Not learn. How did you learn to? You can learn the modes and scales and the sequences of those ideas, and you can learn. You put these links together, and you learn. Did you just learn to throw away what you didn't need and what you used to get the audience off while still being able to? It's hard to play free and still tap your foot to it. You seem to do that really well.
Well, the truth of the matter was that we just played so much. We played all the time. I mean, hours. There wasn't a day that went by
every day
that we didn't play. And so you take the good and you keep that, and you throw away the bad, and you develop as you get older. You listen to the way Jack Sheldon plays. You listen to the way all these guys play, and you just learn from them, and you just hopefully get better. You just keep trying and trying and trying until you get better. And so it's it's a very interesting process. And but it was a lot of fun.
Well, we got a game on this program called Name That Tune. I want to put this tune in for you right now, and then we'll come back and break it down.
Yeah.
What do you got for us there?
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out how you got such a great sound out of your little iPhone.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. You know what? Everybody wants. I hear your generation. It's so great. You're my dad's age, and all these cats are like, yeah, the audio is terrible off that phone. No, it's not. It's really freaking good. It's very good, dude. That's on my YouTube channel.
I know.
Rehearsing and vamping with John Morell. It's your tune. I don't know what tune it's called.
I can't remember the name.
Yeah, but you
now.
love that sound. You love how that sounds, dude. I mean, that thing is cooking.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. That's a really good group of guys that we play with every week. Alan Estes and Ray Neapolitan, and that was Tom Peterson. But we normally play with Paul Novaros. But both guys are great.
They're great. I mean, can you talk about? Well, you and Estes were in high school together, burning it up with Tom Scott. But
yeah,
what about Neapolitan? When did you cross? I mean, was that during the Doors days? I mean, when did you first cross paths with Ray?
Well, I mean, Ray I've known since the '60s when he was playing with Don Ellis's band.
Oh,
and you know, during that period of time, we were doing little jobs together, recording here, recording there, and I'd see Ray and he'd see me, and blah blah blah, and our kind of life, our musical lives, kind of went in different directions, and about you know, we'd see each other over the years, but you know, about 3 years ago, my wife was having coffee with Ray's wife Lori at the coffee shop at the corner, and she said, you know, Ray hasn't really been playing over the last while, and he'd love to play. You think John wants to play, and blah blah blah. So I called Ray and I said, hey, you want to get together and play? So he and I got together and went over a bunch of tunes, and then we got Alan involved, and we started to play, and that's the genesis of our little band.
That is beautiful.
And
the cyclical nature of it all. I love it.
No,
were you on?
Absolutely.
Were you on dates with him though, or you just would cross paths with
sure.
him?
No. We did a lot of recording together over the years, but we never really played a lot together. It was just the way it was. You know, it just depended upon who you were playing with.
You know, I mean, this is we're talking to an absolute legend here. I need you to tell me the story of playing with Miles Davis Quintet.
Well, I never played with a quintet, but I played with Gil Evans one time, and we played behind that quintet. And
okay, well, let me just read. I want to read this. I want to make this is very clear for the record. It says. I'm reading off an article here. It says some of the highlights of Morell's jazz life include the concert he played with Gil Evans' orchestra and Davis's quintet in Berkeley in '68. So paint that paint that picture.
Yeah, that's actually a very well-known concert to people who know about that kind of thing. Wow. But all I know is that I was working with a band here in L.A. and
who was in
Howard
the band?
Johnson, the two. That particular band, Gary was in, Gary Barone, John Gross, and a bunch of guys. But Howard Johnson came down, and because the band had a tuba in it, so Howard Johnson was in town. He used to play tuba with Miles Davis, and also did some contracting for him. And Howard said, "You want to go up to Berkeley? Miles is doing a concert up there with Gil Evans." And I said, "You got to be kidding! Of course I want to go." You know, so I went up there and I played the concert, and it was one of those open air concerts. It was at that big amphitheater that they have up there.
Yes.
And it's funny because a very, very good friend of mine, Darlene Chan, was actually contracted that. That was one of the first things that she did in those days. And
right, she's the head of the Newport Jazz Festival or something like that.
Yeah, she puts all those shows together here and back east and everything.
Sure.
So, and they're actually really good friends.
You know, Howard was. I've done 2 interviews with Hojo, and I know he was close. He was close with Gil. Did he do contracting with Gil or Miles? Because he was always with Gil. He was always playing with Gil.
I don't know, because he lived in New York, so I didn't have a lot of contact with him. But at that particular point, I don't know why he was out here or how he got involved with our band, but we used to do a weekly job at a club in Encino, and he used to come down and play with the band. So, but I mean, it was just a joy to go up there and do that. I've remembered that my whole life. Is the one time I could say that I actually played with Miles Davis.
Well, I was,
and,
I mean, it's
you can't really get away from that. It's great.
Who was it? Workman and who was? I mean, sorry, not Workman. Who was it? Ron and who was the quintet?
It was Ron Ron Carter and
Tony.
And Tony and who's saxophone player? Sorry, I'm missing my Wayne Shorter was playing.
Wayne was playing sax.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was Wayne Shorter.
Yeah,
I mean it was great. And I mean I probably have more. I mean my favorite guy in the whole world is Gil Evans. I mean I just love his writing and everything. And so I mean it was a real joy. It was a lot of fun.
Did you do a lot of? I mean, when you met Shelley, did he access your writing talents right away?
Yeah, he actually recorded. He recorded a. I don't know if it was a tune or two songs of mine before I got in the band, and recorded
which tunes are those? Are you kidding me?
Well, there was a song called "Don't Know" that was on his album Outside.
Yeah, you weren't on that album. That's right. You weren't in the band yet at that point. Junie Booth, my man, was in the band.
Junie Booth was right. Yeah, and then I did the Alive in London album, and I had a few tunes on that album. I can't remember.
I'm going to look it up. No, I'm going to get it right now. I'm just, wait, hold on.
I think we also recorded "Don't Know" on that album. And we also did a thing called, it was a thing in 5, I think. I can't remember.
Well, no, this is, I'm looking here at the credits here. John Morell. Bohannon was a composer on this as well, it looks like.
Yeah, it was one of his tunes. He had just passed away at that time. So
Don't Know, recorded by Morell. Oh, this is badass. I gave this record away years ago. I'm so pissed off. 3 on a match.
3 on a match.
3 on a match, man.
Yeah.
And so I just to be clear, on Outside, he recorded your tune.
He recorded
Don't Know.
Yeah.
You weren't in the band. Alive in London, you're playing on this gig, but you weren't in the band yet.
I was in the band when we finally went to London. Then I was finally in the band. Yeah.
So you were finally in the band. You got in the band when you went.
Yeah.
And this is unbelievable. And you have to give me, because I mean, some of the first cats I've interviewed were Henry the Skipper Franklin and Carl Burnett. And
Henry Franklin. God, I haven't seen.
Well, I'm going to go out and see him. I'm going to go out and see him. I'm going to stay with him in Paris in June. Maybe we can all link up, because I know I've talked to him about.
Tell him I said hello.
I will, and he
Yeah.
But him and Burnett were on a label called Black Jazz, and one of the guys who played keyboards was Roland Haynes, ferocious keyboard player, and here he's playing bass. Man, how did you get him on bass?
It was Shelley. Shelley. I think it was after Junie Booth, and so he was trying to find a bass player.
Mm-hmm.
And this is before Jeff Castleman started to play with us, and he called Roland, and so Roland carried that upright bass all over Europe. I mean, it was amazing. I still wonder how the hell he was able to do it.
I mean, were you consciously aware at that? Of course, you were consciously aware. But in terms, like, were you making an effort to, I mean, again, this Live in London and Mankind is right on the cusp of Mahavishnu, Weather Report, and Return to Forever. And I'm just wondering about your approach going into these tunes. I mean, Live in London is more of was a gig. Mankind is just like these like little chunks of like certain headspaces you guys were in. You know, I mean, it's really jagged. Right. It's the most jagged album I've ever heard in my life.
Right.
I mean, how did you approach that?
We had a lot of material that we were dealing with at that time, but I tried to get tunes that were different, that weren't like the normal tunes. Like there's a song I wrote on the Alive in London album. God, I'm trying to remember names.
Three's a match.
And
3 on a match.
No, not the Alive in London. mainstream.
Mankind. Oh yeah, we'll dial that up right now. My favorite album of all time, dude.
Yeah, there was a ballad on that, and I wanted the ballad to be I just wanted it to be a head that was played twice, and I didn't want any solos on it or anything like that. I just wanted to play the melody, and I wanted just to let it kind of hang out there, and it came out beautiful as far as I'm concerned. It's one of my favorite.
Okay, I'm just gonna read this thing. Was it called Witches?
No, Witches. No.
Witches is a seance, scavenger, maturity, tomorrow, pink pearl, mask,
Pink Pearl.
Pink Pearl.
Pink Pearl was we just played 2 choruses of the head, and also the thing in 7, read the names again.
Well, no, listen. I'm going to put this tune in. This is John Morell on demand right now on the Jake Feinberg Show. Hold on.
All right.
That was actually the kind of sound pedal effects I wanted you to be playing that night with Estes Neapolitan when I showed up.
No, right.
Yeah. I mean, dude, I
haven't done that in a while.
I'm telling you, man. Can you talk about? I mean, that tune was called Scavenger.
Right.
And
that's Mike Wofford's tune.
I was Wofford's. I mean, like when you started, can you actually? That was my question. Can you talk about the first cat who built your first? Why you even wanted to being that you were, in that, jazz aesthetic. Can you? I mean, you obviously were impacted by Hendrix and those. Can you talk about the evolution in using the rock the effects for that crunchy wah wah laden stuff?
Yeah. Well, I had to. Of course, I had to do that. Had to do a lot of it for the studios, and I had to have all those effects, and so that I could do anything that they wanted to do. But in those days, the music was, I mean, up until the mid '60s, a little later than that, everything was kind of bebop. It was all kind of straight ahead jazz, and then with the advent of the Beatles and a lot of the stuff, it started to open up. So we all tried to draw a lot of those sounds into the jazz sounds. Like I remember Mike had one of the first ring modulators, and he used to turn that thing on. You can hear it in the Alive in London album, I think. And he'd hit that thing, and you never knew what was going to come out. But he'd play a note, and the thing would go ring a ring a ring a ring a ring. But we were into trying to draw a lot of those sounds into the stuff that we were doing, and it really changed the music for us. I mean, it really opened up the idiom, and so that's what it was.
Well, no, I mean I'm curious because I don't have the audio queued up, and I'm disappointed. I thought I had it time marked, but do you have a memory of the recording date of Mankind? Do you remember how that all went?
That was 71, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, 71.
No,
Yep.
70 or 71.
Yep.
And he had a deal with Bob Thiel. I think that was Impulse. Was that Impulse?
It was mainstream. Mainstream.
It was
Yeah.
It was mainstream, and so we went into the studio and we spent I don't know, we had about 5 or 6 dates, and just did a lot of playing. Shelley sounded great on that stuff, and but that's about the time, I think, and that was just when I was beginning to pick up all this stuff and kind of buy a lot of. I think I switched at that point from one of those fat body guitars, and I got a 335, which is a thin body guitar, which had a little different sound to it. So I was changing in those days my attitude and my sound.
Because I mean, I just want to maybe have to refresh your memory, but John Gross, this was his recollection of Mankind. We cut that album at the record plant in L.A. We were booked for 3 days, so Shelley said. He said, the first day we're going to spend just going over everything, and then we'll go back the next 2 days and record everything. These were tunes we performed every night, 3 or 4 times a week at the Manhole. There was no question about what was going to happen as far as structure. So we did that, and after the first day, he said, we're done. I'm partially responsible for that because the first record, Outside, we made, I wanted to do extra cuts because it wasn't good enough. That record helped me learn. The first or second take is the best, and you shouldn't do any more. You should only do a second take. Right. And he goes, I was having a bear, and so did a lot of other people, but it turned out well. So his thinking was good. Did Shelley do? I mean, that to me was a master of mind games. Not just Shelley, but I think all the brilliant cats, Mancini, Sinatra, all these guys had this sort of amazingly gifted way of playing these Jedi mind tricks. And so, I mean, do you remember that? I mean, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah. I don't remember it quite the same way, John. I seem to remember being in the studio about 3 days. That was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Though, but we spent a lot of time mixing too, so that's probably part of it all. And we spent a lot of time in the booth listening, and I think we recorded a lot more songs than that, and so we had to decide upon the tunes that we picked. But the tunes we picked, we tried to keep them all in the same kind of style. You know what I mean? Not real traditional jazz, but kind of stuff a little bit more outside. And Shelley had a big part of that. I mean, he had a really good overview. I mean, you have to realize that here was a guy, Shelley Man, who was as traditional as they come, and all of his friends, Ricky Kamuka and Richie Kamuka, and all the guys that were playing with him for years and years and years, said, "Why are you playing with these young kids playing this stuff? Don't you miss playing the traditional jazz and everything?" But Shelley, he just loved playing something different. He just had, the greatest mind
so
for
cool,
it.
man.
He just loved playing music, and the more different it was, and the more unusual it was, the more it turned him on. And that's why he was such an unusual guy, such an unusual player. Just kept trying, kept reaching.
I mean, it's so beautiful to hear that. I mean, how many nights a week? How did the whole thing work at the Manhole? I mean, was it the house band would play every night, and then there'd be, maybe Herbie's band or other bands would come through? I mean, how often were you in there? And then, I mean, it was actually just the opposite. The like a band like Herbie would come in, and they'd play like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then Friday they'd play, and we'd play every other set. So they'd play 3 sets, we'd play 2. And then Saturday night we do the same thing. Sunday night we do the same thing. So we always played at least 3 nights, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Oh, that is incredible, dude.
So, I mean, it was such a lucky time for me as a person, because Bill Evans would be playing, and we'd be playing opposite Bill Evans, and I was a kid in those days. I was in my early 20s, and I could go backstage and sit with Bill Evans and talk, and we'd sit and hang out. He's a really sweet guy. Really great man, and but everybody was like that. All the players, everybody that came in would just hang out in the back. You'd get to know all these guys, but we played opposite everybody. The only band we wouldn't play opposite was Miles, because there wasn't enough time trying to turn the room over. You know what I mean? The place was jammed. So they had a line outside the club forever. So,
can we put a date on when you actually officially joined? Well, I guess it was. The house band, did that come before recording dates, or did it happen at the same time?
Yeah. No, that it was about 60, 67, 68. I actually joined the band, and it was like 2 years after that. I think that we did the trip to Europe.
Right, London. That's right. Absolutely.
Live in London. And we played a whole bunch of concerts there in Italy and up the coast and everything. And
who were the other old school cats that, like Shelley, who were as straight as traditional as they came, but adapted to the younger guys' way of driving? Because there was an attitude in that time period on everywhere in the States where you're not playing the real shit, you're not playing the I hope I wouldn't have been a purist like that as a journalist. But who else? Who were some of the other guys? Harold Land loved to stretch out. He was always doing really intense stuff. But
all the great players, like Victor Feldman comes to mind more than anybody.
Oh yeah.
Because we used to work with Victor all the time in the studios, and he was always in the back playing vibes or playing timpani or playing whatever he had to play. He was always in the percussion section. Probably the greatest piano player in the world.
Yeah.
Was playing percussion in the back in a band, playing some silly song, and
he's doing it, and he's having a ball. He's having a ball.
He's just having a ball, and I think all the really good players, talk about Harold Land and all these guys, they all wanted to play, and they all were always trying to play something a little better. Some were more traditional than others. What can I say? Like, it's really hard to relate to names.
Like
Bill Perkins, for instance.
Right.
Bill Perkins was like a relatively traditional player. He grew up in the big bands and all that stuff. But boy, when this guy got on the bandstand, it was like he'd just close his eyes and he'd play, and he'd just knock your socks off every time. But he was a very traditional player. Even when he played more adventuresome, he had a traditional sound. It was like Stan Getz. Stan Getz had this really traditional sound, but he was the most incredible jazz player ever.
Did I tell you that I'm working on a documentary on Stan?
Oh boy, I tell you, I would love to see it.
Well, no, I'm telling you, man,
years have gone by.
Yeah. Well, go ahead. Did you know? Did you cross paths with him at all? Do you get to hang?
I never met him at all. I know Johnny went out on the road with him a lot. Johnny Guerin. And
Johnny Guerin did?
I have to tell you,
John Guerin. I have no. Hold on. I have no. I have been the primary. That's amazing. If that's true, I've never heard that, but that's unbelievable.
Yeah. He used to go out of town with him in the, I don't know what year.
Well, Stan was a genius, but he was also a sociopath. And the bottom line is that. But someone just told me they were having a conversation. I was at a concert last night, and this older doctor was telling me, he saw Stan in the 70s when he had Tony and Stanley Clark and Chick Corea, and he was backstage in just like a really foul mood because kind of what we're talking about. He's like, all these people just want me to play this bossa nova shit. He's like, I want to move on.
Right.
I want, all the great cats want to keep finding new ground.
Absolutely. And he definitely was one of them. And the funny thing about Stan Getz was he had this really traditional sound, but he just played absolutely incredible. I mean, it's just really wild. Huh.
One question as we wrap up set one here with John Morell. I just wanted to ask you about, do you, when I look back on it, I mean, you came on my radar because of this really mercurial album on, I don't know, whatever. It was a solo album, you know, and I'm like, and it's like you're playing the pop hits of the day, or it's like got a string section, John Morell. And and I'm like, looking back on it, did like, were you pleased with how you were marketed as as a budding star? I mean, that's the way everyone was getting. The only reason, here's the point. I started collecting records in the 90s when I was at Boston University in the late 90s. And the only reason that I'm aware of like John Morell and, you know, these Castleman and Neapolitan is because you collect records, you open if you're into this certain sort of music, you open the gatefold, you're like, oh, who's this cat? You know, you guys had identity.
Right.
You guys had identities, right? Today, with YouTube, we're saturated. That was the primary learning medium back then, was records, tapes, but you guys had an identity. Right. And I'm like, looking back, was Johnny Morell pleased with how you were portrayed? Because it came across as like California pop. It didn't come across, in my mind, it should have come across as Howard Roberts-esque, you know, but that's all, you know. How do you feel about how that was marketed or how that came out?
Well, to be perfectly honest, that particular album, I was kind of a young man in those days.
Yes, you were.
And yeah, I was really young. And,
I mean, you were just a rookie, you know?
A lot younger than I am now. But it was interesting because I was offered to do that album for Capitol. And the concept of the album was for it to be a very commercial album. So I never really thought of it as an album that would really sell me. It was an album that I did for Capitol, so Capitol could sell their quadraphonic systems.
That's right. And it's quadraphonic.
My only regret in that whole thing was that it was just happening. It was happening so fast because nobody had any money. So, you know, we did the guitar tracks real fast. When I listen to it now, it's like the guitar sounds very bland, and I wish that I had. I wish I could go back and kind of redo it again, but I was just kind of a young man at that time, and I didn't really grasp the situation. But when I finally got with Shelley, and you had a chance to actually open up and play music and be involved in writing, that's when it became more of a personality thing for me.
Did you ever? When was the first time you were a leader of a band?
Well, I always had after Shelley, and even during that period of time, I used to have a quartet with Albert Stinson. Do you remember Albert Stinson?
What are you talking about? He was. I cannot. Keltner and Bobby Hutcherson were saving his life every night so he wouldn't choke on his.
Oh, I know it.
So you were in that milieu. You were in that milieu. Are you serious? You were at the Dragonwick and places like that.
Well, I was good friends with Albert because he used to work all the time, and he used to play with me all the time because I loved the way he played. He
Albert is a genius, man. Yeah, everybody says that, man. Every freaking person says that, dude.
Yeah, and I did everything I could do to play with him, and he was playing with Shelley for a while.
Really?
That's really how I got to know him, and he was the sweetest, nicest guy in the world, and he loved his kid, and he had a big thing with his wife, and he moved to New York and wrecked Steve Swallow's bass, got in a car accident, and the next thing I knew he was gone.
Hold on. How did you? Hold on. You haven't listened. I've done Swallow in my second interview because I was talking to Keltner. This is going back like a month. Keltner's like, he's like, you tell Swallow how much of an impact, because when he was playing with Albert, you know, I mean, everybody's playing with Albert, you know, but when Keltner and Albert, you know, it was like they just got off on that stuff. So when I did my second interview with Swallow, he told me, he's like, Yeah, Stinson stayed in my house and borrowed one of my basses and died on the gig in Boston.
Right.
It was Swallow's gig bass, man. You knew that? I mean, that's in the interview.
Yeah.
That's crazy, man.
No, I knew that. Well, I mean, we were all.
It was a small tribe,
right where I was. Yeah, I remember right where I was when I found out that he passed. I was on the freeway driving, and I just about drove off the road. And I mean, he was just a great guy. Okay, you have so many people that you play with and you relate to in music, and they may not be somebody you see every week or whatever, but they have such an impact on your life, and he was one of those guys. I mean, Albert was. I mean, it was like a flash. You know what I mean? He came and he passed so soon. I mean, it was incredible. You know, I was doing a. I'll just tell you this one story.
Go ahead.
I was working at a place called the Jazz Suite, which was in Beverly Hills many years ago, and it was a big club. I mean, a big fancy club. And upstairs, I was playing with Red Norvo.
Wow.
And downstairs, can you believe that? I'm playing with Red Norvo.
Hold on, was this vibes and guitar, or was there like a drums too?
No, vibes, guitar, bass, and Albert was playing bass.
Oh my God!
Right. So downstairs was Oliver Nelson's band was playing, and Ray Brown was playing with Oliver. So Ray was doing the Joey Bishop show at that time. So Albert used to go down and sub the first set before Ray got there, and then he'd come upstairs and play with us for our first set upstairs. And between the time he played with Oliver's band downstairs and the time he played with us upstairs, he'd lose his bass. He couldn't find it.
He was a total mess and what a mess. What a freak.
A genius, and yet it was incredible.
Yeah, no, he was a shooting star. But you know, I every night before I retire for the evening, I throw on this album, and I want to just ask you. She never gets talked about ever, and she died in the 70s. Did you know Irene Krall?
Oh yeah, I knew her well.
Okay, because I listen to this album every night. I just want to tell you this one album, Crawl Space. I play it in my garage. It's Nick Ceroli, another cat you probably knew.
I love Nick.
I mean, dude, Broadbent,
so
Amel, Fred Atwood, who I don't know, where the heck is Fred Atwood? I have no idea where he went. But it was.
I have no idea.
But I got to tell you, man, she's dying of cancer during this album. It's called Crawl Space.
Right.
It's the Frischberg and this guy Wolf. All these cats are writing these crazy tunes. I'm telling you, I play this every night, and I can feel her spirit in the heavens with her voice going out.
Yeah.
Can you tell a good Irene Krall story? Because I think she's one of the most badass musicians I've ever heard in my life.
No, my only real experience with her was I was over at Gene Estes' house. I'm trying to think because it's been a while now.
Yeah, I know.
And we were over there, and we were recording something there. I don't know if it was George German or somebody like that. There was this guy who used to come with his Revox machine and some good microphones, and he used to record bands. And I did a bunch of tracks with her at Gene's house, and she just what a great singer she was, and a really great lady too. She was just wonderful to be around, and I just had the time of my life.
Ceroli, do you get a chance to play with Ceroli a lot? That dude was ridiculous.
I play with Nick all the time because we used to work with Deep Arden's band at Dante's here in town.
Whose band? Whose band?
It was D. Barton.
I don't know that name.
He used to be with Stan Kenton. He used to write a lot of Stan Kenton charts, and we had a band here in the Valley, and we'd play like once a week at the club. And he actually did the music for Clay Misty for me for Clint Eastwood's film. And did a bunch of other films like that too.
And Ceroli, Ceroli was playing brushes, and you were just—I mean, what an amazing that dude. I mean, the album is it's mind blowing, and I don't know why she gets lost in the shuffle. But when do you have any live gigs coming up?
Not at this point. We're kind of just trying to get some stuff together with this new band.
Yeah.
And then we'll probably go out and look around and see what we can put together.
Well, we just cooked here for about 70 minutes, man. That was a great set one, and let's plan on doing a set two down the road.
Hey, it's great talking to you, Jake.
Yeah, man. It was a great hang. I'll get a copy of this out to you either later tonight or tomorrow, but it was... Yeah, this is just the beginning, man. I mean, I always do part twos and threes, so, this is just goodbye for now, brother.
Great. It's great talking to you. Thanks, Jake.
Great hang, man. Talk to you soon.
Talk soon.
Later on. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
The legend, John Morell. Another one in the books. Thanks to Ray Neapolitan for setting it up. We'll be back. This is the Jake Feinberg Show. Peace.